On June 19, 1986, the most talented basketball player alive went to sleep in his college dorm room. He never woke up, and the nightmare that followed did not just destroy one man, it swallowed an entire era of sport that was never supposed to end. His name was Len Bias. 2 days earlier, the Boston Celtics had made him the second pick in the NBA draft. Larry Bird had just won his third championship. The dynasty was supposed to continue. Then Bias died on a Tuesday morning from a cocaine-induced cardiac arrest, and the most dominant franchise in basketball history would not win another title for 22 years. But here is the thing nobody talks about. His death was only the beginning of the horror. Len Bias arrived at the University of Maryland in 1982 as a 6'8", 195-pound freshman whose scouts described as raw and undisciplined. 4 years later, the same scouts were saying he was the most complete forward in the country. Not one of them, the most complete forward in the country. Celtics scout Ed Badger compared him directly to Michael Jordan. Think about that. Jordan was already a year into his NBA career and turning the league upside down, and the Celtics were about to add someone scouts said was his equal, but bigger, stronger, and built for the physical game of the Eastern Conference. In his final college season, Bias scored 35 points against the number 1 ranked North Carolina Tar Heels, including 7 points in the final 3 minutes of regulation to force overtime, and 4 more to seal the win. He did that in their building, the first time any visiting team had ever beaten them there. Bias was not supposed to win that game. He decided he was going to anyway. He finished his college career with 2,149 points at Maryland. He was named ACC Player of the Year twice. By draft night, there was not a scout in the league who thought anyone else deserved to go second. The only reason he did not go first is that the Cleveland Cavaliers already had their pick locked in before the season ended. Draft night was June 19th. The Celtics flew him to Boston. He met Larry Bird. He signed a shoe deal with Reebok. He flew back. He went to his dorm room with friends to celebrate. And somewhere in the hours that followed, he snorted cocaine. His heart went into arrhythmia, and at 6:55 in the morning, Len Bias was pronounced dead at the age of 22. Now here is where the horror actually begins. Because what his death unleashed did not stay inside the walls of that dorm room. It did not stay inside the University of Maryland. It did not even stay inside sport. It reached into the United States Congress, and within 4 months, rewrote federal law in a way that would eventually send hundreds of thousands of people to prison. In the weeks after Bias died, the political panic was immediate. Congress rushed a major piece of legislation called the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986. One of its central provisions established a mandatory minimum sentence of 5 years for possession of 5 grams of crack cocaine, but required 500 grams of powder cocaine to trigger the same penalty. 100-to-1 disparity. Crack was cheaper and more common in black communities. Powder was more common in white ones. The law that bore Len Bias's name, passed in the emotional frenzy following his death, became one of the most racially imbalanced pieces of criminal legislation in modern American history. It would take Congress 24 years to partially correct it. Len Bias did not just die. His death became a weapon, and the people it hurt most looked a lot more like him than the politicians who wrote the law. But the haunting does not stop there. Because what the Celtics lost that summer was not just a player, it was a dynasty. Think about what Boston had in the summer of 1986. Bird, McHale, Parrish, the 3 best front-court players in the game, plus a 22-year-old physical freak who scouts said belonged in that conversation already. The Celtics were building something that should have lasted another decade. Instead, Bird's back began to deteriorate within 2 years. McHale played through a broken foot in the playoffs and was never the same. Parrish aged, and the franchise built around the idea that Bias would be their next chapter had nothing left to rebuild with. 22 years. That is how long Boston went without another championship. And in every one of those years, you can draw a straight line back to a Tuesday morning in June when everything changed. There is one final piece of this story that most people have never heard. On December 5th, 1990, 4 years after Len's death, his younger brother Jay was shot and killed in a drive-by shooting outside a shopping mall in Hyattsville, just a few miles from the university. He was 20 years old. He was pronounced dead at the same hospital where Len had died. He was buried next to him at Lincoln Memorial Cemetery. One family, 2 sons, both gone before 23. Their mother, Dr. Was Bias, spent the decades that followed traveling the country as an anti-drug speaker, turning the worst thing that can happen to a human being into a reason to keep going. She said this: "The situation in your life is the lemon. Your tears are the water. What you do with both of them is the lemonade." She passed away in March of 2026. She never stopped. Len Bias never played a single minute of professional basketball. He never appeared in an NBA box score. But he changed the sport, the law, and an entire generation's understanding of how fast everything can disappear. Not because of what he did on the court, because of what happened after the most important night of his life, the most talented player in the country, the second pick in the draft. 22 years old on a Tuesday morning. Look up the 1986 draft class tonight. Find the picture of Bias in the green Celtics hat, holding up the jersey, smiling like the whole world is ahead of him. Because it was, right up until it wasn't.